Arizona Cardinals training camp in full swing. That's right. And who better to get in here and talk about the Cardinals in the 2024 NFL season? Our guy from Pro Football Focus, lead draft analyst, Trevor Sikkema, joins us here on PHNX Cardinals. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, like this video. Trev, how's the offseason been, my man?
It's good. It's good. Like you, I'm preparing for what is basically the next 8 months of my life where I'm going to blink once and it feels like it's just going to be April, but so much is going to happen between now and then. So obviously a training camp, it's a very exciting part of the football calendar, right? I mean, you could see that by how much people freak out about, catches and plays when guys don't even have pads on yet, but it's because we're excited for some football. So I'm excited to talk about it here with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got a 12-man draft class coming here to Glendale for Jonathan Gannon, and they've infused this roster the last two draft seasons with young talent. And, I want to talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. I want to talk about Darius Robinson, but I can't get away from this cornerback battle that is brewing here in the desert. You've got Sean Murphy-Bunting, who's a nice veteran who I think is going to get, the nod as far as one of the starting cornerbacks. But CB2, Trev, are a trio of guys who were top 100 picks the last two drafts. How do you see it playing out with Garrett Williams, Max Melton, and Elijah Jones?
Yeah, I mean, I liked all three of these guys to a degree. To be fair, I liked Melton and Williams more than I like Jones, but I understand the allurement of Jones. And I feel like, if he's even CB3 in this group, I think that's a pretty good developmental guy to have as a depth piece. But the two guys that I do want to talk about most, Garrett Williams and Max Melton, I felt like Williams would have been drafted a lot higher had he not gotten hurt, right? And I think that losing that key season that he needed to sort of put some good tape out there, I felt like he was really coming on strong during his underclassmen years, and I thought he put out some really good tape even before he got hurt, but I just think the injury was bad timing for him in that final season. And so, I think that he is somebody who he's got the length, he's got the change of direction ability. I think he's got great instincts as well. I think if you put him in off coverage, he's certainly great when he's looking at the ball, looking at the quarterback. And anytime you have a guy who's got really good instincts when he's off the ball, that really says, okay, well, baiting throws, getting interceptions, right? That's what a defense loves. And I'm sure that's how aggressive Jonathan Gannon wants to be. So I like Williams a lot. I think that he could be a starting corner in this league. I felt that when they drafted him. I felt like they got like a steal when they were able to get him later in the draft. Max Melton, sort of the same thing. I went into last year's draft class really liking Max Melton. I think I had him as CB5 going into the year, and he had a little bit of an up and down year, that final year with him at Rutgers. I mean, they were playing him outside, they were playing him inside. But as I was watching him, I thought, man, he's getting worked a little bit on the outside. He could still start on the outside. I'm not saying that he can't, because I think he's a smart corner. And anytime that you're a smart corner, you can have an anticipation and a confidence level that could yield a really good starting role. But I felt like he could also be a great slot defender as well. And I don't know if that's where he's going to start with Arizona, or it might be something that they kind of have him do throughout his career. But to me, Melton's got a lot of inside-out versatility. I know people talk about Williams as being more of like a nickel corner than an outside corner. I sort of felt like it's the opposite. Like, I think that Melton actually could be the better inside corner, and I like Williams as the outside corner, but we'll see how they end up deploying both of those guys. I think they can both do each job well enough, but to me, I'd love for them to trot out the corners as Williams on the outside, Sean Murphy-Bunting on the outside, and then Max Melton on the inside. We'll see if it ends up shaping up like that, which is kind of funny because I'm a Tampa guy. I watched Sean Murphy-Bunting play in the slot a lot in Todd Bowles' system. So if those three guys emerge, you almost have all kinds of flexibility with you can kind of play corner wide receiver matchups a little bit, right? Where if you go to if you say, all right, well, I like Murphy-Bunting against this receiver for the other team, then he can maybe follow him around a little bit. If you say, I like Max a lot against this receiver on the other team, you're not afraid for him to line up on the inside versus the outside. So it is a really interesting battle. I like Williams on the outside a little bit more. I like Melton on the inside a little bit more, but it does feel like that's sort of switched. So we'll see what ends up coming to be with that group.
Hey, look, a young, versatile defensive secondary. I think that's refreshing to see here in a place where you used to just kind of kick the tires on some journeyman free agents and just kind of see who could play opposite Patrick Peterson for far too long. Now it looks like, they've got some real players, and credit to Trevor Sikkema, who put Max Melton on our radar right before he worked out at the combine. Like, you get hipster Max Melton credit. Like, you were in the dive bars watching him work out before any of us knew, before he blew up. And I think he's going to blow up for the Cardinals here shortly as, 43rd overall pick. Some high expectations for him. Now, let's look at the offensive side of the football, because I think a lot of Cardinals fans get pumped up when they think about what this offense can be. When Kyler Murray returned last year, the final 8 games, yardage-wise, they were a top 10 group. Kyler Murray did some really nice things, uneven, but some nice things in his first year in a system. You add an ex-receiver the caliber of Marvin Harrison Jr. What do you think what's I guess the heights that this offense can reach in 2024?
Well, I don't know if I have like a number, like, oh, I think it's going to be a top 10 offensive group, a top 5 offensive group, whatever it is. But I do like this group a lot. You mentioned Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he gets a lot of the headline as the guy that's going to come in. He's going to be a wide receiver 1 for this team. I think that Greg Dortch also as well, kind of in like this wide receiver mix. When you talk about depth receivers, the speed that he could give you, I know he's kind of a fan favorite. A lot of people like him as well. Trey McBride, if you throw him in from the tight end spot, I mean, I think he's going to ascend to one of the best tight ends in the NFL if people don't think that he is already, especially from a receiving end. You go back to his time at Colorado State and just the insane usage that he had and how they built their entire passing attack around this guy. I think that he is going to be a big piece of how they move the ball through the air in this upcoming season. He's going to have his best year yet, I believe. But then, Michael Wilson is my sleeper breakout guy, right? I mean, you talk about guys who I was fans of during the draft class. I had Michael Wilson as my wide receiver 6 in that season back in 2023 because I watched him in person at the Senior Bowl, and I was just blown away by how this guy won with not only his athleticism, but also his mind. He was somebody who could set you up in a variety of different ways. If he was going up against a bigger corner who was trying to press him, he knew how to get off the line of scrimmage very easily. If he was going up against maybe a smaller corner who was playing a little off coverage, he knew how to eat up the coverage and then create that separation through the break of his route. He'd give you great contested catch opportunities as well. So Wilson is somebody who I think only helps complete what could be this passing attack that a lot of people are really excited about. And he's the name that's not talked about enough. I think that when you go back to his time with Stanford, you see that at PFF, we have a statistic called threat, which is essentially wide receiver usage. How often are you getting targeted for every route that you run? And Wilson, in all 5 years that he was at Stanford, he had an above 20% threat percentage, which the best wide receivers, it's like high 20%, maybe low 30s if you're like Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb or something. But above 20% is what you want. That means you are a focal point of where your passing attack is going. He had that in all but one season, and the one that he didn't, it was like a 19.5. So he is used to getting the ball. So as they give him the ball more this upcoming year, it's not going to be foreign to him. He's going to be used to it. He wants them to lean on him more. I think he's a great all-around receiver. So I like this unit a lot. It's got all the makings, especially with a healthy Kyler Murray, to be a top 15, potentially even top 10 offensive unit in the league.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And like when you talk about the skill set with Michael Wilson, obviously the biggest thing for him is health, right? And he missed some time even in his rookie year, but you take into consideration the size, the skill set, what the data that you had pre-draft, what he produced in his rookie year. And then he's telling us this offseason, he's engaged the lovely Sophia Smith, who's a rising star on the women's U.S. soccer team. And he said, you know what, honey, I'm actually going to focus on my relationship with Kyler Murray. That's top priority to me this offseason. He risked it all with this unbelievable fiance of his to improve his rapport with his quarterback. That was his top priority. And what do we see on social media all offseason is they're away from the facility, working out at UCLA, working out at local Phoenix high schools. Like, it feels like every weekend, Trev. Like, I think he's poised absolutely for a breakout, even more so now.
When you say to the fiance, "Hey, honey, I'm going to just hang out with the fellas, and we're gonna work out and just talk about ball and life and everything." You normally don't have that long of a leash with it, but right. I guess clearly it's working out for them, and they're on the same page, which is good.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a certain level of testicular fortitude in that relationship to make that move, make that call. But it's working for him. It's working for Michael Wilson. You mentioned Kyler Murray. What do you think the potential for Kyler Murray is? Is this kind of a resurgence, kind of change the narrative type season for Kyler Murray?
I think so. I really do. You go back to, what was it, 2 years ago when he was 2, 3 years ago when he was playing at like an MVP caliber level. And I think some things have sort of gotten in the way of him really achieving that. Obviously, the injury is the big one, but now he's had a full off season to kind of work with this group, this new coaching staff that's in there. And, it seemed like they were just gelling a lot more than it felt like this team was gelling when Cliff Kingsbury was here, right? I mean, not to, overblow a couple of clips, but, the one going around where it's like, hey, they're yelling at each other on the sideline, and that's football, right? I mean, like, that kind of stuff is going to happen, but it felt like there was just a more comfortable confidence in what was going on last year. Now, obviously, the expectations weren't as high, so it's easier to play under pressure when there's not nearly as much, but I think the expectations are healthy expectations for them this year, especially for Kyler to get back to that MVP form, and whether or not it's going to be statistically as good of a year as it was a handful of years ago. I can't remember which year was that, 2021, 2022, but
21.
Whatever season that was in 21, it doesn't have to be exactly like that, but you've got to be up to that caliber of a player, every single week if the Cardinals are really going to continue to compete, especially in a tough division. So to me, that those are the expectations for me, is that Kyler is going to have an equal or close to equal best season of his career. I really believe that. I think that that's kind of where we're going, the direction that we're going. And even if we don't see that statistically, maybe he's like a year away from statistically having the best year of his career. As long as he's on that trajectory, we go, okay, now the offensive weapons are really coming together. The offensive line's going to get even better. You hope, in theory, in 2025, that's when we really hit the ground running and take a run at a deep playoff run.
Yeah, I think there's a strong belief within the organization, even if it's not there statistically, they'll know what to look for, and it will calm the waters around the fan base if they continue to show belief in their franchise quarterback. Last question for our great guest, Trevor Sikkema, of course, the lead draft analyst over at PFF. 12-person draft class, as I mentioned. We mentioned a couple key players out of that. But how many should we expect to play significant snaps here in year one?
Man, a lot of them, right? I mean, like Harrison Jr., Darius Robinson, those are the obvious ones. I mean, you mentioned Max Melton's going to be in the mix, whether he's a starting cornerback, he's going to play this year. I think Taylor Demerson is somebody who was also going to get in the mix in this safety group as well. I think he'll play plenty as a depth player on special teams at the very least. I loved how he saw the field when I was watching him at the East-West Shrine games. He's so smart. I think it's only a matter of time before he's going to be able to get on the field. Trey Benson, obviously, I think he's going to be in that running back room mix. And then, you got some offensive line guys, Isaiah Adams, Christian Jones, those players who maybe you'd rather not start right away, but I think they're going to be good depth players for you. But Tip Ryman is the one that I don't know if people are kind of talking enough about, because he's somebody who, he's not the receiver that Trey McBride is. And in fact, I think Ryman, for his skill set, a lot of people, myself included, was like, whoa, okay, they drafted him early. Like, that was an early draft pick, taking him in the third round. But I get it, because he's such a reliable blocker that you can now play 12 personnel and you are fearless to move Trey McBride wherever you want. You are fearless to set him up in line, in the slot, as an X, whatever. And I think you have that flexibility because you have Ryman on the team. So this is a big draft class, and you don't often get this many contributing rookies when you have this big of a draft class. But I do believe there's a path to playing time for half, if not more, of these guys who were drafted last April from Arizona.
Yeah, it's exciting time. It seems like Xavier Thomas might even be able to crack the pass rush rotation, a guy that came in from Clemson. But yeah, Tip Ryman, I mean, it seemed like that was a luxury pick that you wouldn't think a team in year two of a rebuild could take. But 82nd overall, they're sitting there with 7 top 100 picks. Why not fill a role? Why not check a box? And to take the best blocking tight end in the class certainly fills a role and a need in this offense. You can't find any better insight on the NFL draft than Trevor Sikkema, or just overall talking NFL. What else you guys got going on over at PFF leading up to the season?
Yeah, obviously, if anybody out there is looking to get some draft talk for the upcoming college football season and maybe the 2025 class, we're doing that over at the NFL Stock Exchange podcast, which you can check out on YouTube. And then for everybody who's listening to this, if you're big into fantasy football, We got all of our fantasy football tools for you over at pff.com. Fantasy.pff.com. It's where you can check out the fantasy football mock draft simulator. You can get all the premium stats for our fantasy football draft guide kit, everything, man. So go check it out. If you're in a fantasy league and you're looking to get an edge, PFF's got a lot of different statistics, a lot of simulation suggestions to help you win your league. So go check that out as well.
I hate to do this to you. I got to slide one last question. We are we're fiends over here. We're sickos. You know that about us.
Yes.
My co-host Johnny Venerable, he's way more blunt than I am. But when we fire up the PFF actual mock draft simulator, we see the Cardinals sitting there at 7. Is there any way we can get them bumped down a little bit? It just hurts our heart a little bit.
It's well, hold on here. You know that you were picking 1 and 2 last year, so I mean you were basically right there for the Cardinals last year. So 7's a little better, but
it is an improvement
for everybody out there. Don't shoot the messengers. We just take Vegas's Super Bowl odds, I believe, and then we just kind of like put that in for where the teams are. We will revisit that sort of right when the season starts. I think for the first 4 weeks of the season, we still base it off of Vegas's odds to win the Super Bowl, but then we switch it over to record, I think right around the maybe week 3, week 4 mark. So you can start getting your actual draft fix in with the spot a couple weeks into the season.
Man, with the Bills and the Rams and the Lions the first 3 weeks, that it might not get much better than 7. It might go the opposite direction with the Cardinals' gauntlet of a schedule to open the season. But we appreciate it, my man. Always enjoy the insight. Make sure you follow him along on Twitter at Tampa Bay Trey. Trevor Sikkema. Thanks, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, bro. Anytime.